You do not defeat an airborne invasion with farming tools. This is not courage. This is not desperation. This is military impossibility. Airborne operations, paratroopers dropping from the sky to seize objectives behind enemy lines, represent the cutting edge of modern warfare in 1941. They require elite soldiers, specialized training, coordinated air support, the element of surprise. When paratroopers land, the defending force must be a trained military with heavy weapons, artillery support, and fortified positions. Without these things, resistance collapses in hours. The paratroopers secure their objectives. Reinforcements arrive. The battle is over before it begins. Every military planner in Europe understands this in May 1941. Airborne assault is a German specialty. The Fallschirmjäger, Germany's paratrooper corps, are considered the most elite fighting force in the Wehrmacht. They jumped into Belgium and Holland in May 1940. They seized critical bridges and fortresses. They shattered Allied defenses before ground forces even arrived. These are not ordinary soldiers. Fallschirmjäger candidates undergo approximately 3 months of intensive infantry training, followed by a grueling 16-day parachute course. Physical conditioning, jump technique, small unit tactics, close-quarters combat. They are volunteers, selected for aggression and initiative. They carry lighter weapons than regular infantry because they must jump from aircraft, but they compensate with superior training and fanaticism. When Fallschirmjäger land, they win. This is the pattern. This is the rule. Germany's High Command, the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, the OKW, plans Operation Mercury, the airborne invasion of Crete, with absolute confidence. The island will fall in 48 hours, maybe 72 if Greek and British forces resist longer than expected. Crete is strategically vital. The island sits in the eastern Mediterranean, south of mainland Greece, between Europe and North Africa. Whoever controls Crete controls air and naval routes across the region. British forces use Cretan airfields to threaten Axis operations. German forces need those airfields to dominate the Mediterranean. The plan is elegant in its simplicity. Drop thousands of Fallschirmjäger onto 3 key airfields: Malem in the west, Rethymno in the center, Heraklion in the east. Seize the airfields in the first hours. Fly in reinforcements and heavy equipment. Overwhelm the defenders with speed and shock. Declare victory within 3 days. General Kurt Student, commander of Germany's airborne forces, personally oversees the operation. He is confident. His men are the best in the world. The defenders are exhausted. British Commonwealth troops retreating from the Greek mainland, supplemented by poorly equipped Greek soldiers and local militia. They have limited artillery, no air support, low morale after weeks of defeat. This will not be a battle. This will be a demonstration of German airborne superiority. On May 19, 1941, Student briefs his commanders in Athens. He tells them that Crete will be the graveyard of the British Empire in the Mediterranean. He expects light resistance. He predicts total victory by May 22nd. But what Student does not know, what no one in the German High Command knows, is that the people of Crete have decided something that will change the course of the war. They have decided not to run. Crete is not like other places. The island has a history of resistance that stretches back thousands of years. Cretans are mountain people, shepherds, farmers, fishermen, fiercely independent. They have been invaded by Romans, Byzantines, Venetians, Ottomans. Every conqueror learns the same lesson. Cretans do not submit easily. In May 1941, Crete's civilian population numbers approximately 450,000. Most live in small villages, scattered across rugged mountains and coastal plains. They grow olives and grapes. They tend sheep and goats. They live simply. But they are not simple people. Many Cretan men served in the Greek army during the recent war against Italy in Albania. They fought in the mountains through brutal winter. They saw Italian forces, superior in numbers and equipment, driven back by Greek determination. They learned that technology and training matter less than the will to fight. Now, in May 1941, thousands of Greek soldiers are on Crete. The Greek army evacuated from mainland Greece after the German invasion in April. These soldiers are exhausted. Many have no weapons. Their units are disorganized. But they are combat veterans. They know what war looks like. Alongside the Greeks are British Commonwealth forces. Approximately 27,000 troops. British, Australian, New Zealander. Most are also evacuees from the Greek mainland. They arrived on Crete expecting rest and reorganization. Instead, they receive orders to defend the island against imminent German invasion. The Allied commander is Major General Bernard Freyberg, a New Zealander. Freyberg is a legendary figure. He won the Victoria Cross in World War I and carries wounds from 9 separate battles. He is brave, experienced, and deeply worried. Freyberg's forces lack everything: heavy artillery, anti-aircraft guns, ammunition, transport vehicles, communications equipment. The British Royal Air Force has only a handful of obsolete aircraft on Crete. The Royal Navy controls the sea around the island, but cannot operate near the coast during daylight because of German air superiority. Freyberg knows an airborne attack is coming. British intelligence, reading German communications through ultra-decrypts, has provided detailed information about Operation Mercury. Freyberg knows the landing zones. He knows the German objectives. He knows the approximate timing. But knowing the enemy's plan does not mean he can stop it. Freyberg positions his forces to defend the 3 key airfields. He assigns Greek troops and Commonwealth units to cover likely drop zones. He orders his men to dig defensive positions. He tells them to prepare for the largest airborne assault in history. And then he addresses the civilian population. On May 19th, the same day General Student briefs his commanders in Athens, Freyberg meets with Cretan civic leaders in Chania, Crete's largest city. He tells them the Germans are coming. He tells them the battle will be brutal. He urges civilians to evacuate inland, away from the coast and airfields where fighting will be heaviest. The Cretan leaders listen. Then they refuse. One elderly mayor, his name is lost to history, but his words are recorded in British military reports, tells Freyberg, "We stayed when the Turks came. We stayed when the Germans came in the last war. We will stay now. And if they land here, we will fight them." Freyberg tries to explain that civilians cannot fight paratroopers, that untrained men with hunting rifles and farm tools will be slaughtered, that this is not their war to fight. The mayor smiles. He says, "General, you do not understand Cretans." Across the island, Cretan men gather whatever weapons they can find. Hunting rifles, shotguns, old military rifles left over from previous wars, axes, knives, pitchforks, clubs. Some have no weapons at all, just the determination to defend their homes. Cretan women prepare to support the defense. They organize supply lines. They set up medical stations in homes and churches. They hide food and ammunition. Elderly men who cannot fight take up positions as lookouts and messengers. The people of Crete are not soldiers, but they are ready. On the morning of May 20th, 1941, the skies over Crete fill with the sound of aircraft engines. 500 German transport planes, Junkers Ju-52s, approach the island in waves. Each carries 16 to 18 Fallschirmjäger. The paratroopers are tense but confident. They have jumped into combat before. They know what to do. At approximately 8 a.m., the first wave begins dropping over Malem airfield in western Crete. The Germans expect to land unopposed, to secure the airfield within hours, to begin flying in reinforcements by afternoon. Instead, they land in hell. The first German paratroopers exit their aircraft at 120 to 150 meters altitude. This is German paratrooper doctrine: jump low, deploy parachute immediately, minimize time exposed in the air, land fast. But jumping this low has a cost. Paratroopers hit the ground hard with little time to control their landing, and they are visible targets from the moment the parachute deploys. As the first Fallschirmjäger descend toward Malem airfield, the sky erupts with gunfire. Machine guns, rifles, anti-aircraft weapons turned horizontal to fire at men instead of aircraft. The Germans are being shot while still in the air, helpless beneath their parachutes. Fallschirmjäger doctrine assumes paratroopers will land before defenders can react effectively. Assumes confusion will buy seconds or minutes to organize. Assumes defenders will be suppressed by pre-assault Luftwaffe bombing. None of these assumptions hold true at Malem. New Zealand infantry of the 22nd Battalion, dug into defensive positions around the airfield, open fire the moment German parachutes deploy. Bren light machine guns, Lee Enfield rifles, concentrated, disciplined fire. The New Zealanders are professional soldiers. They do not panic. They aim, they fire, they reload, they fire again. German paratroopers drop from the sky. Some are hit while descending and arrive dead. Others land in the killing zone and are shot before they can shed their parachutes. Weapons containers, dropped separately, land scattered across the battlefield. Paratroopers who survive the landing must crawl through fire to reach them. The first wave is shredded. One New Zealand soldier later recalls shooting German paratroopers as they descended, the bodies collapsing onto the ground like broken puppets. He is positioned in a slit trench overlooking the main drop zone. He fires. He reloads. He fires again, methodically, without hesitation. The killing is mechanical, necessary. There is no time for emotion. By 9 a.m., bodies in German paratrooper smocks litter the fields around Malem. Hundreds of them. The initial assault has failed to secure the airfield, but the Germans keep coming. The second wave arrives at 9:30 a.m. More Ju-52 transports. More Fallschirmjäger. This time, German commanders adjust drop zones to avoid the heaviest fire. Paratroopers land further from the airfield, in olive groves and vineyards on the slopes of Hill 107, a small rise overlooking Malem. These paratroopers land more successfully. They find cover among the trees. They retrieve weapons. They begin to organize. And then they encounter the civilians. Cretan farmers and villagers, watching the battle from nearby settlements, move toward the landing zones. They carry whatever weapons they have: hunting rifles, axes, knives. They move through the olive groves in small groups. Families, neighbors, men who have known each other their entire lives. The German paratroopers, regrouping under the trees, suddenly find themselves under attack from directions they did not expect. An elderly Cretan man with a shotgun fires from 30 meters and drops a paratrooper squad leader. A teenage boy with an axe charges a wounded German trying to reload his rifle. A farmer with a pitchfork stabs a paratrooper who landed in his olive grove. This is not combat, as the Germans understand it. This is not a military formation engaging another military formation. This is something else, something chaotic and personal and savage. German after-action reports describe encounters with armed civilians throughout the first day. Paratroopers report being attacked by irregulars, armed with farm implements, hunting weapons, and improvised clubs. The reports convey confusion and anger. This is not how war is supposed to be fought. At Malem, the battle becomes a grinding, close-quarters nightmare. New Zealand forces hold the airfield itself, but German paratroopers establish positions in the hills above. Neither side can dislodge the other. Casualties mount. By noon on May 20th, the German assault on Malem is stalled. Not defeated, stalled. The airfield is contested. The Germans have not achieved their objective, but they are still fighting. Simultaneously, German forces drop on Rethymno and Heraklion, the other two target airfields. At Rethymno, Australian infantry of the 19th Brigade meet the German assault. The Australians fight with the same discipline as the New Zealanders at Malem. They shoot paratroopers in the air. They counter-attack German positions before the enemy can organize. By afternoon, the German assault at Rethymno has completely failed. The Australians hold the airfield. German paratroopers are scattered in pockets, surrounded, running out of ammunition. At Heraklion, British infantry and Greek troops defend the airfield and the city. The battle here is even more brutal than Malem. German paratroopers land directly in the city streets. Cretan civilians attack them with rocks, knives, and boiling water poured from windows. British infantry storm German positions in hand-to-hand fighting. By evening, the Germans at Heraklion are pinned down in a cemetery on the edge of town, a grimly appropriate location, unable to advance or retreat. May 20th, 1941, the first day of Operation Mercury. German plans called for 3 airfields secured by nightfall. Instead, all 3 airfields remain in Allied hands. German casualties are catastrophic. Estimates vary, but at least 1,800 German paratroopers are dead or wounded on the first day. Nearly 1/3 of the first wave. Bodies lie in fields, in olive groves, hanging from trees where their parachutes snagged. Weapons containers sit unopened because no one survived to reach them. In Athens, General Kurt Student receives reports throughout the day. Each report is worse than the last. He cannot believe what he is reading. His elite Fallschirmjäger, the best airborne soldiers in the world, are being slaughtered by farmers and exhausted infantry. Student makes a critical decision. He commits his reserves. He will concentrate everything on Malem. If he can take one airfield, just one, he can fly in reinforcements and turn the battle. Malem is the westernmost target. It is closest to German bases in Greece. It is the most logical choice. On the night of May 20th to 21st, the situation at Malem reaches a critical point. New Zealand forces hold positions around the airfield and on Hill 107, but they have taken heavy casualties. Ammunition is running low, communications are severed, radios destroyed, telephone lines cut. The battalion commander cannot contact higher headquarters. He does not know if reinforcements are coming. He does not know the status of other sectors. In the darkness, isolated and under continuous German pressure, the New Zealand forces make a fateful decision. They withdraw from Hill 107 during the night, pulling back to more defensible positions further east. The decision is tactical: preserve the force, avoid encirclement. but it surrenders the high ground. By dawn on May 21st, German paratroopers occupy Hill 107. From the heights, they can see Malem airfield spread below them. They bring up machine guns and mortars. They begin suppressing Allied positions around the runway. The loss of Hill 107 changes everything. German forces do not yet control the airfield. Allied forces still hold positions at the runway edges, but they control the high ground overlooking it, and that is enough. On May 21st, German transport aircraft begin landing at Malem, despite ongoing fire from Allied positions. The first Ju-52 to land is shot at. It crashes on the runway, the second crashes, the third makes it, then more, then dozens. German mountain infantry, Gebirgsjäger, pour out of the transports. These are not paratroopers. These are regular infantry with full equipment. Heavy machine guns, mortars, anti-tank guns, artillery. The balance shifts. Allied forces counterattack on May 22nd and 23rd. New Zealand and Greek units attempt to recapture Hill 107 and close Malem airfield. They push east along the coastal road hand-to-hand combat. Bayonet charges, men grappling in the dust. But German reinforcements keep arriving. By May 24th, over 10,000 German troops have landed at Malem. They push south into the mountains. Allied forces begin falling back. The defense collapses not because soldiers stop fighting. They fight with desperate courage, but because they run out of ammunition and have no air support and no way to stop German reinforcements pouring through Malem. Cretan civilians continue fighting throughout the battle. In villages across the island, Cretans ambush German patrols. They snipe at convoys. They hide Allied soldiers. They attack isolated German units with whatever weapons they have. The Germans respond with brutal reprisals. Villages are burned. Civilians are executed. The Germans are enraged that non-combatants dare to resist. Fallschirmjäger view Cretan civilian resistance as illegal under the laws of war. Civilians fighting soldiers are francs-tireurs, unlawful combatants, subject to summary execution. The battle for Crete continues until June 1st. Allied forces evacuate from ports on the southern coast. The Royal Navy, operating at night to avoid German air attack, rescues over 16,000 troops. Thousands more are captured when they cannot reach evacuation points. On June 2nd, 1941, one day after the island officially surrenders, German forces execute 50 Cretan civilians in the village of Condomari as punishment for resistance during the battle. The civilians are lined up and machine-gunned. A German soldier photographs the massacre. The images will later become evidence at war crimes trials. Similar atrocities occur across Crete. The pattern is clear. The Germans are punishing the entire civilian population for daring to fight back. Crete falls. Germany wins. Operation Mercury is technically a success, but it is a victory unlike any other. If you find these forgotten stories of resistance and courage as powerful as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of ordinary people facing impossible odds deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. The casualties tell the story. German forces suffer approximately 6,500 killed or missing and 3,200 wounded during the battle for Crete. Total, nearly 8,000 casualties. This represents more than 20% of the assault force. Nearly 4,000 German paratroopers, Fallschirmjäger, are dead. Over 1/3 of Germany's elite airborne corps. Units that took years to train are wiped out in days. For comparison, Germany lost approximately 26,000 killed. during the entire invasion of France and the Low Countries in May and June 1940, a 6-week campaign that conquered 4 nations. Crete, a single island, costs Germany more dead in 10 days than France cost in 6 weeks. Adolf Hitler is stunned when he receives the casualty reports. He summons General Kurt Student to Berlin. According to witnesses, Hitler tells Student, "Crete proves that the age of the paratrooper is over. Such operations are obsolete. The losses are unacceptable." Hitler issues a directive. Germany will never again conduct a large-scale airborne operation. The Fallschirmjäger will be retained as an elite infantry force, but they will fight on the ground. No more mass parachute drops. No more airborne invasions. This decision has profound consequences for the rest of the war. In 1942, Germany considers an airborne assault on Malta, a British island fortress in the Mediterranean that threatens Axis supply lines to North Africa. Hitler vetoes the plan, citing Crete. Malta remains in British hands. Rommel's Africa Corps suffers crippling supply shortages because Malta-based aircraft and submarines sink Axis convoys. The North African campaign, which Germany might have won with better logistics, grinds into stalemate and eventual defeat. In 1943, Germany considers airborne operations to disrupt Allied landings in Italy. Again, Hitler refuses. The memory of Crete is too fresh. German forces fight defensive battles with conventional infantry instead. The strategic irony is profound. Germany invents modern airborne warfare. Germany trains the world's best paratroopers. And then Germany abandons airborne operations because one island full of farmers and exhausted infantry killed too many Fallschirmjäger. Meanwhile, the Allies learn the opposite lesson. British and American planners study the Battle of Crete closely. They note that Germany's airborne assault nearly succeeded despite catastrophic casualties. They conclude that with better planning, better equipment, and better support, airborne operations can work. The United States expands its paratrooper program. The 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions are formed. Thousands of American soldiers volunteer for paratrooper training. British forces expand their own airborne units. On June 6, 1944, D-Day, over 13,000 American, British, and Canadian paratroopers drop into Normandy hours before the beach landings. They seize bridges. They disrupt German communications. They create chaos behind enemy lines. The airborne assault is critical to the success of the invasion. The Allies use airborne forces again in Operation Market Garden in Holland, again during the Rhine crossings, again in the Pacific Theater. Paratroopers become a signature element of Allied operations. Germany, the nation that invented airborne warfare, watches as the Allies perfect it. And Crete is the reason why. For the Allies, Crete is a tactical defeat, but a strategic gift. The island is lost, but the German losses are so severe that Hitler effectively abandons airborne operations. The Allies gain a 3-year window to develop their own airborne capabilities without German competition. For Crete itself, the consequences are brutal. German occupation lasts until May 1945. It is one of the harshest occupations in Europe. The Germans never forget that Cretan civilians killed their soldiers. Reprisals continue throughout the war. Villages are burned. Hundreds of civilians are executed. Resistance fighters are hunted mercilessly. But Cretans never stop resisting. Partisan groups operate in the mountains throughout the occupation. They sabotage German installations. They ambush patrols. They hide Allied soldiers and downed airmen. The island remains a thorn in Germany's side until the end of the war. The Battle of Crete also impacts individual lives far beyond the battlefield. In New Zealand, the loss of young men at Malem is felt in every small town. The 22nd Battalion suffers over 500 casualties, dead, wounded, captured. For a nation of only 1.5 million people, these losses are devastating. Memorials are erected. Names are carved in stone. Families mourn sons who died defending an island most had never heard of. In Greece, the battle becomes a point of national pride. Cretans are honored as defenders who refuse to submit. Their resistance is celebrated in songs and stories. The island's defiance is remembered alongside Marathon and Thermopylae as examples of Greek courage against overwhelming odds. And in Germany, the Fallschirmjäger who survived Crete are changed. Many veterans later write that Crete destroyed their illusions about war. They had believed they were invincible. They had jumped into Belgium and Holland and won with minimal casualties. Crete taught them they could die, that civilians could kill them. That victory could come at a cost too high to bear. One German paratrooper veteran, writing years after the war, reflected on the battle with haunting simplicity. We won Crete, but Crete defeated us. The names of the Cretan civilians who fought at Malem, Rethymno, and Heraklion are mostly lost. We know a few. Ioannis Dramatinos, a farmer from near Maleme, who killed 3 German paratroopers with a shotgun on May 20th before being shot himself. Eleni Zografaki, a woman from Chania, who hid 12 wounded Allied soldiers in her basement and fed them for 2 weeks before they could be evacuated. Manolis Patarakis, a shepherd, who led British commandos through the mountains for 4 years, evading German patrols. But most are anonymous. They did not write memoirs. They were not interviewed for military histories. They were ordinary people who lived ordinary lives before the war, and, if they survived, returned to ordinary lives after. What they did was extraordinary. 4,000 German paratroopers died on Crete. Not all were killed by Cretan civilians, many were killed by Allied soldiers. In the battle's resistance played a critical role. The Germans themselves acknowledged this in after-action reports. Civilians disrupted German operations, forced German soldiers to fight on multiple fronts, created uncertainty and fear that degraded German combat effectiveness. Civilians armed with farm tools do not normally defeat elite paratroopers. But on Crete, in May 1941, they did enough damage to change history. Major General Bernhard Freiberg, the Allied commander, wrote after the battle, "I saw Cretans fight with weapons I would not hunt rabbits with against soldiers equipped with automatic weapons, and the Cretans did not run. They closed the distance. They fought at arm's reach. They died with their hands on the enemy's throat." The cost to Crete was immense. Approximately 1,500 Cretan civilians were killed during the battle and immediate aftermath, executed by Germans, killed in crossfire, or killed while fighting. Thousands more were killed during the 4-year occupation that followed. Villages were destroyed. Families were shattered. Today, in the town of Malem, there is a memorial. It lists the names of the Cretan civilians killed during the battle. The list is long. Many entries simply say unknown man or unknown woman, aged approximately because no one survived to identify the bodies. On the anniversary of the battle each year, Cretans gather at the memorial. They light candles, they read the names, they remember, and they tell their children what happened on May 20th, 1941. They tell them that when German paratroopers landed expecting an easy victory, the people of Crete picked up whatever they could find, and fought back. That farmers stopped elite soldiers. That ordinary people did extraordinary things. The Battle of Crete is remembered in Germany too, but differently. It is remembered as a cautionary tale, a reminder that technological superiority and elite training do not guarantee victory, that wars are won or lost by the will of the people who fight them, that underestimating your enemy is the first step toward defeat. General Kurt's student, who planned Operation Mercury, survived the war. He was tried for war crimes related to the execution of Cretan civilians, but was acquitted due to insufficient evidence. He lived until 1978. In interviews late in his life, he was asked about Crete. He always said the same thing. "We won the battle, but the cost was too high. If I had known what it would take, I would never have recommended the operation." Adolf Hitler, who ordered the attack, never spoke publicly about Crete's casualties, but his decision to ban further airborne operations speaks volumes. Crete broke something in Hitler's confidence in his elite forces. It introduced doubt, and doubt, once introduced, grows. The paratroopers who survived Crete and continued fighting on the ground as conventional infantry carried the memory with them. Many fought at Monte Cassino in Italy. Many fought in Normandy. They were still elite soldiers, but they were no longer invincible. Crete taught them mortality. The New Zealand soldiers who fought at Malem returned home as heroes, though many struggled with what they had witnessed. The 22nd Battalion was reformed and fought with distinction in North Africa and Italy. But the men who survived Crete rarely spoke about the battle. When asked, most would only say variations of the same thing. "We did what we had to do." The 4,000 German paratroopers who died on Crete are buried in a German military cemetery near Malem. The cemetery was built after the war. It is immaculately maintained. Row after row of flat stone markers. Most are engraved with names. Some say unknown. The cemetery is visited by German tourists, veterans and family members. They come to honor the dead. They also come to understand. Because Crete is not a story of German triumph. It is a story of German hubris met with unexpected resistance. The Cretan civilians who fought are honored differently. In homes across the island, families keep photographs and heirlooms, a shotgun that belonged to a grandfather who fought at Malem, a knife used to attack a paratrooper. These objects are not displayed as trophies. They are kept as reminders. Reminders that courage is not the absence of fear, that resistance is not futile even when victory is impossible, that ordinary people can change history. If this story of farmers facing paratroopers, of civilians resisting conquest, of a small island that refused to surrender, moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm that these stories of courage matter. We're dedicated to rescuing forgotten stories from the archives. Stories of resistance and sacrifice. Stories of people who refused to accept defeat. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or country. If you have Greek, Cretan, German, or Commonwealth heritage connected to this battle, tell us your family's story. These stories belong to all of us. Thank you for ensuring that the Cretan civilians who picked up pitchforks and shotguns, the New Zealand and Australian soldiers who held the line at Malemi, and the 4,000 German paratroopers who died far from home, do not disappear into silence. They fought. They suffered. They changed the course of the war. They deserve to be remembered.